Thank you. It's been a while.
It has. Hope you've been well.
Yeah, everything's been good.
Glad we decided not to have this outside.
Yeah.
I'm hiding in the basement where it's cold.
Yes. Hope you've been well.
Yeah, been good.
I just came back from Colorado, Frisco. It was absolutely perfect there. So are we on now?
That's what I was just going to tell you. Yes, we are live on YouTube and recording, so you may proceed. Thank you.
All right, very good. Okay, welcome everyone. This evening is our monthly meeting of the Board of Adjustment. While we are having to change how we operate, we are still committed to a transparent process and encouragement of public comment during our meetings. We will be accepting testimony from parties. If you wish to testify on any particular petition before us this evening, please use the raise hand feature. You can raise your hand at any time and we will recognize you at the appropriate time for the presentation of evidence for each case. Director of Planning, Joe Vunich, will be moderating the Zoom meeting and will be asked to provide names of those individuals that wish to speak, again, as hands are raised. Okay, I would like to call the meeting of the City of Wildwood's Board of Adjustment to order. The board members present today are Mr. Bob Morris, board member, Mr. Michael Lee, alternate member, Mr. Daniel Sides, alternate member, Jim Rubus, alternate member, and myself, Arnie Sprunger, member and acting chair for tonight's meeting. The Department of Planning staff present is Mr. Joe Vunich, Director of Planning, and Ms. Melanie Ripto, Assistant Director of Planning and Parks, City Administrator, Mr. Steve Cross, and City Attorney, Mr. John Young, and Court Reporter, Ms. Courtney Tallman are also present. First, I offer into the record the affidavit of publication pertaining to today's meeting on July 21, 2022, and take official notice of the zoning ordinance of City of Wildwood, including Chapter 400, Article 2, authorizing and establishing the Board of Adjustment's powers and duties. Now, let me explain the hearing procedure. Please be aware that the information I'm about to describe is also provided on the Board of Adjustment public hearing procedure handout, which was available online prior and up to tonight's meeting. This hearing is informal in its nature. However, the meeting's proceedings will be recorded by a reporter for future transcription if that becomes necessary. The petitions are called in the order listed on the agenda. As a petition is called, I will ask a Department of Planning staff member to read each request into the record. Thereafter, the Department of Planning will have opening remarks and a brief slide presentation. Then the petitioner or their representative will be asked to state their name and address, be sworn in by the court reporter, make a brief presentation to the board explaining the nature of the requested variance, and present such evidence and witness testimony that may evidence the practical difficulties or necessary or unnecessary hardship that warrant the variance. Sorry about that. The board will only consider the unique character of the property to determine whether they warrant the granting of a variance. Board members may ask questions to clarify the facts of the petitioner's presentation. When the board is satisfied with the material presented by the petitioner, the chair, myself, will ask if there is anyone present online who would like to speak in favor or opposition to the requested variance. Each speaker will be asked to provide their name and address, be sworn in, and then provide their evidence and oral testimony. Procedurally, the petitioner may request a continuance at any time during the hearing prior to a call for the vote in order to bring in additional evidence or testimony. The board may also continue the proceedings. After the submission of testimony and evidence from all interested parties, the board will ask the staff person to provide the Department of Planning's report on the matter. If requested by any member of the board, the petitioner, or any individual that is participating online. Once all witnesses excuse me, have been heard, the chair itself will call for a motion to grant or deny with or without conditions, and then the board will vote. At that time, the presentation of evidence relating to the petition is concluded and no further evidence will be permitted. The board may take action today. 4 members of the board must vote in favor of the variance for it to be approved. If a variance is approved, the petitioner has 6 months to obtain the necessary permits or establish the use, or it will expire. If the board's decision is unfavorable, the petitioner has the right of appeal to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. This appeal must be done within 30 days of the decision. Okay. Mr. Vunich, are there any questions at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To those attendees, if there are any questions relating to what was just recited by the chair into the record, if you would please use the raise hand feature. The department will promote you and you can ask your question of the city attorney, city administrator, or the Department of Planning staff. Thank you.
We'll
Mr.
give
Chair,
just a
I see none.
second. Okay. No questions? All right. At this time then, please read the first request into the record. And after that, we will see a brief slide presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the board, the first request is BA 23-22, Douglas Falkel, 17603 Myrtlewood Drive, Wildwood, Missouri 63005. Requests an exception to the site-specific ordinance governing this residential subdivision for the purpose of replacing an existing retaining wall upon the property located at 17603 Myrtlewood Drive, St. Louis County, locator number 19B 22038, Plat 2 of Wild Horse Subdivision, Lot 235, thereby authorizing a new structure to be erected within a required 30-foot undisturbed and ungraded buffer strip. This request is contrary to the setbacks established in Ordinance 13944, approved by St. Louis County on June 2nd, 1988, and Chapter 415.110 R1 1 acre resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, Ward 2. And Mr. Chair, before Ms. Ripito begins the slide presentation, the department would like to enter into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2, Board of Adjustment of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the department relative to this particular request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any testimony, exhibits, maps, or other items offered as evidence as part of tonight's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. And Ms. Ribito, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, as Mr. Vunich just read into the record, this property is located at 17603 Myrtle Drive. It's located in the northeast quadrant of the city. You can see from the overview that the lot is very similarly sized to the lots around that. It was part of a planned residential neighborhood. When you take a closer look, you can see from the contour lines that there's quite a bit of a slope on this property towards the rear of the property. This is the site plan that was submitted to the city of Wildwood regarding the retaining wall. The retaining wall is represented by this line that goes behind the house. As you can see, this retaining wall is located within a 30-foot buffer strip that was intended to separate subdivisions as part of the planned subdivision that was platted by St. Louis County prior to Wildwood's existence. The first photograph is a photograph of the home on the site. This is directly across from the home. You see it fronts onto the cul-de-sac. This is looking down the street, down Myrtle. And this is looking up the street. You see the neighboring property. The retaining wall in question is located at the rear of the property. As you can see from this photograph, the slope begins as soon as the house ends. The retaining wall is right along the tree line and kind of hard to see. It's again located right along the tree line here, and it's only, I would say, probably less than a 2-foot tall retaining wall, maybe 18 inches. Again, it's right here. You can see that it's a wooden tie wall, and it is currently in need of replacement. And with that concludes our presentation, but the applicant is here and would be able to better elaborate on the request.
All right, and before we hear from the petitioner, thank you, Ms. Ripito.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for the department from any of the board members? Okay. Oh, Mr. Rubis.
Joe, on the documents and on the agenda, it's listed as Chesterfield, Missouri. This is within the confines of Wildwood, is that correct?
Yes, sir. The Chesterfield reference is due to the postal zip code. When I read the request into the record, I did add Wildwood. It is within Wildwood's jurisdiction, but thanks for noticing.
Any other questions for the department?
One.
Yes, Mr. Sides.
So what is the specific ordinance that's the problem? It looks like it's within the 30-foot setback. What are they, what's the variance for?
Mr. Sides, it's kind of an unusual one in the fact that it's not related to the underlying zoning regulations of the R1 1-acre resident district. But back when the St. Louis County Council approved the site-specific ordinance for the Wild Horse subdivision, which was a major project, 435 lots and homes, they tried to kind of offset criticism about lot size as it approached certain areas of the project. And so they created these non-disturbed, ungraded buffer strips to kind of placate the neighbors. And so in this particular instance, the house needed a retaining wall, and it was installed into a portion of the buffer strip, not all of it. And that's what's here tonight. The authorization, if the board granted it, would allow the retaining wall to be replaced in the same location and encroach slightly, I think about 30 feet into that buffer strip.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, then at this time, we'd like to invite the petitioner to come forward and state their name, address in relation to the property, and then remember, be sworn in by the court reporter.
My name is Doug Fappel. I am the property owner at 17603 Myrtlewood Drive, Chesterfield, Missouri.
Please raise your right. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Doug.
Okay. Thank you all for joining here tonight. And one thing I did want to clarify, somebody referenced that it was 30 feet into the buffer zone. It's actually only a couple feet into it. It's barely in the buffer zone.
Okay.
And it is an old tie wall that is starting to, fall and rot. And it's definitely going to cause a structural issue if I don't replace it. And as you can see, I definitely submitted a letter that I had an engineer look at it and said it for sure needs to be replaced.
Okay. I mean, basically what's going on here is you're just redoing what has already been done many years ago.
Yes, that's why I was actually shocked to see there was a issue when I applied for the permit. Because originally it was built there when the builder did it.
Right. Mhm. Okay.
If it wasn't there, it'd be a big problem on my yard.
Right. Okay. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
I submitted all my paperwork, and my neighbors, they have no issue with it. You can see with the included letter that they wrote. And it's really not even visible. Mine is just in my own backyard.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that, sir. And are there any questions from any of the board members about this matter?
Not at the moment.
Actually, I'm asking if any of the board members have a question.
Oh,
for
I'm
you.
sorry, I misheard you.
No, you're okay. You're okay.
Okay.
You're okay.
I have an infant here that I'm listening for that was just born a couple days ago. So I'm somewhat distracted. Sorry.
Yeah, well, you'll have your hands full here then, I guess. So,
Oh, I do.
yeah, I'm sure you do. Mr. Lee. We cannot hear you, Michael. I'm not sure what's going on.
I'll go back to the headphones if this works.
Perfect. Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you great.
So this question is for Joe. On the surveyor document that's in the packet, surveyor's real property report, it looks like they drew the retaining wall in kind of with pencil. If that's too long, like he says, it's not going into the buffer zone, maybe we white that out and get that shown adequately correct. That makes sense.
Yes, Mr. Lee, certainly we'd like to have as accurate as information as possible for the board, and then thereafter, once the board acts. That's why I assessed it as a distance of about 30 feet.
Right.
Obviously, the property owner says it's much less. When the department advertised it, it didn't necessarily establish a distance because, again, what was provided was enough to advertise, but certainly we didn't feel comfortable assessing a feet. My statement was just an estimate of what I saw.
So as a suggestion, if this passes, maybe we have an as-built type document from the retaining wall installer that would depict what was approved.
Mr. Lee, as you know, that can be a condition of a favorable action.
Okay, that's what I would recommend when we get to that point.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Rubis.
Doug, are you the original owner?
No, I'm not. I bought the property this March.
Oh, okay.
It's been bought and sold a couple times since I bought it.
Okay.
And basically the old property owner let everything go, and it should have been replaced quite a while ago because it's literally ready to fall over right now. But you can go kick the top layer off of it.
Yeah, it looks like railroad ties or something that.
Yeah, they're completely rotted.
Yeah, they sure do. Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, I don't see, I don't sense any other questions. So thank you, Doug, for sharing with us. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to any speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor or opposition to the request. Mr. Vunich, do we have anyone who would like to speak?
Well, Mr. Chair, again, if any of the attendees would like to speak on this particular matter, if you'd use the raise hand feature, the department will promote you and then the chair will recognize you.
So we'll give just a few seconds here to make sure that we give ample time. I do not see anything. So therefore, we will move on. At this time, I'd like to offer an opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report, if anyone would like to hear that. If so, would you raise your hand? Okay, I don't see anyone needing that. So at this time, if the department would like to make any final comments, please do that.
Mr. Chair, before I give a very, very brief presentation, Mr. Collier, did you want to speak on this matter? I saw his hand go up just as you started. Mr. Chair, would you like to recognize him and promote him?
Sure, that would be fine. Only I don't think I can do anything about that.
He should be coming on screen here shortly.
There he is, Mr. Collier. We see you now. Okay, and you are muted, so you'll have to unmute. And please, when you are unmuted, state your name, address, relationship to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Name's Greg Collier. Address is 335 Cherry Hills, 355 Cherry Hills Meadows Drive, and I have no relationship with Doug. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand this. So this is an existing wall, and it's crumbling, and the owner wants to essentially replace it, repair it, and he's going to pay for it himself, not with city funds. Is that right?
Mr. Chair, he needs to be sworn in before we can proceed.
Oh, sorry.
Correct. Yeah. So if you would just, fair question, but just hang on a second, Mr. Collier, and we'll get you sworn in.
Please, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to do this, but if you wouldn't mind repeating your question or comment, that would be great.
Yeah, yep. The just understanding the situation, it's an existing retaining wall. It was built. It now needs to be repaired. The owner's paying for the repair, correct? Himself?
Yes, I'm paying for everything. The owner.
Yes.
Yeah, I got
Yes.
it. Okay, yeah, I totally, I just want to say I totally support this. Seems like this would be a no-brainer.
Thank you, Mr. Collier. Appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Well, Mr. Chair, kind of going back where we started, the department is supporting this particular request. We recognize that it is an encroachment into a undisturbed, ungraded area, but the wall is essential to retaining the grade on that portion of the lot. If there are any questions for Ms. Ripito or I, we'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Okay, before we close the proceedings for a vote, are there any comments or questions by the board members to kick this around? And if so, please raise your hand and let's do that. Okay, I don't see anything, so I think we're going to go ahead and close the proceeding, and we're going to ask for a vote. So at this time, I'd like to call for a vote, either a motion to approve, deny, or with conditions. Mr. Morris?
I make a motion that we approve it.
And do we have a second? Mr. Rubus?
I will second the request, but do we want to put Mr. Lee's suggestion in there that we have an as-built if this is approved?
We certainly can do that. Mr. Morris, would you be comfortable with amending your motion to include? Okay, so,
Yes, I'll amend it, Mr. Lee's comment.
Second that.
okay, all right, thank you. All right, we will ask for our vote now. Mr. Sides, how do you vote?
Vote to approve.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes,
Mr. Rubus,
Yes,
and I myself vote yes. Congratulations, your variance is approved with that one condition.
All right, thank you.
You are welcome. Okay, at this time, if we could have our second case read into the record, that would be great.
Mr. Chair, the second case is BA 24-22, Drew and Elizabeth Cecil, 16601 Colby Manors Court, Wildwood, Missouri 63040. Requests an exception to the natural resource protection standards for the purpose of erecting a segment of fence upon property located at 16601 Colby Manors Court, located number 23U 110283, Lot 3 of the Manors at the Enclaves subdivision. The installation of this segment would cause land disturbance in an area of the lot that is 100% protected. The request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 420.200, Natural Resource Protection Standards and Procedures of the Subdivision and Development Regulations of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, as applied to this property located in the R1-A 22,000 square foot resident district and Chapter 415.120 R1A 22,000 square foot resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance. This property is located in Ward 6. Also, Mr. Chair, the department would like to enter into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning for this particular request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any testimony, exhibits, plats, or other items offered as evidence as to not part of tonight's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, we will have a presentation by the department. I believe that will be you, Ms. Ripton, correct?
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the board. If I can, there we go. As Mr. Vunich read into record, this property is located at 16601 Colby Manors Court. It is in the center of the city towards the eastern boundary. As you can see from the overview map provided, it is in an area that is also relatively high density residential with some commercial within proximity. The property itself, as you can see, is relatively flat and has very few contours, very little change in the topography. And as you can see from the overhead, it's relatively sodded or grassed with some planned landscaping, it looks like, on the property. The applicant provided this site plan, which shows the natural resource protection area highlighted in green, and then the fence that they would like to install with the red dotted line. As you can see, the red dotted line does cross through the natural resource protection area. Shown here. This is the house that is the subject, or that's located on the subject site. This is the house directly across the street. This is looking west down Colby Manors Court. And this is looking east, as you can see, onto another subdivision. And this is Old Fairways Road here. This is looking down the side of the house along Old Fairway. And as you can see, the area in question is primarily planned landscaping and may have been disturbed during the development process. This is a photograph of the rear of the property. You can see the back of the house to the left, and it's mostly just grass. Back towards the rear of the lot, you can see a tree line, which is along Manchester Road with a few individual trees located within it. This is Manchester Road, and you can see the rear of the property here with the tree line. This photograph is looking at the house, so it'd be looking south from Manchester Road. And with that, that concludes the department's presentation, unless the board has any questions for Mr. Vunich or myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. Okay, are there any questions that any board member would have for the department at this time? I have maybe a clarification question. The natural resource protection area, that goes right through the property, is that right?
That is correct. If you'd like, I'd be happy to bring the site plan back up on screen.
Yeah, maybe so. And where they want to put the fence, I see on the one side where, yeah, okay. So on the right side, you can see the dotted line. On the left side, does the fence go all the way around? Yeah, it goes all the way around back to the house. I guess I didn't see on the left side exactly where that fence line goes. I don't know if it really matters that much, but
There's
it
an
does.
existing fence.
Oh, there's an existing fence there?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Okay, I know that we haven't sworn you in yet, and maybe
Yep.
the department should really answer that question, but anyway, okay. Okay, and where that fence is going to go, I think you showed that, Ms. Ripito, on some pictures. It's fairly flat, isn't it?
It is. The entire lot is pretty flat, and the lands, there's very little landscaping or trees that it would interrupt, if any, from what I saw on site.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions by any of the board members for the department? Okay, if not, then at this time, I'd like to call, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I do see some hands. Okay, so Mr. Rubus, if you wouldn't, go ahead.
If I'm looking at this thing correctly, the western side of the property, it looks like the neighbor has an existing fence. Is the intent to hook on to the neighbor's fence at I guess that would be the neighbor's north?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Okay, let me zoom into this on the site plan. From what I see, yes, that is correct. It is the red dotted line shown does connect to an existing fence that is on the neighbor's property right along here. If you can see my cursor.
Okay, that's fine.
And I'm sure that the petitioner will address the fact that he actually would be, or she, or whoever will be putting a fence on someone else's property, but we'll wait for that part. Dan, did you have a question too?
Yeah,
A comment?
so, okay. So I'm looking at this and obviously the rest of you know that I'm fairly new to this. So what I'm gonna ask is probably really dumb, but what is the actual resource protection piece of this property? I mean, I saw the overhead, but all I see is maybe a slight berm, and then it goes down toward the sidewalk. All the trees appear to be planted by the developer, I'm assuming. So where does the natural resource part come into play here?
Ms. Ribito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Although I can't say for certain, it looks like the land was disturbed at the point in time in which the developer was doing the grading, and I would guess that the trees that were on site are not any longer. But Mr. Vunich can confirm if I'm misspeaking.
Mr. Sides, this particular property, these lots that form the enclaves at the Manors and then the original enclaves at Cherry Hills, it was a golf course. So some of the resource protected areas were already turf because they were part of a golf course. And when the developer was asked to comply with the natural resource protection standards, the developer has to follow a certain set of rules, one of which is to try to create a contiguous area as large as possible for the protection zones. And so they do that. They try to get the homes, as many of the homes that are allowed on place. So yeah, sometimes the resource protection areas are kind of not as logical as one might think, but it's a game of trying to provide the protected area while still being able to develop the site.
I feel like I'm in a bit of a twilight zone here. So I'm looking at a piece of flat ground. And for some reason, the people want to put up a fence. Now, I haven't detected if there's any problem with the setbacks yet, but I just don't see why we're even dealing with it. I guess I'm struggling with that part of it.
Well,
I don't see what there is to protect. I don't see what's anything there that was put there that is protecting anything. I guess I don't get it.
so Mr. Vunich, would you mind sharing how these natural protection resource areas even come into being?
Yes, sir. I'll do the best I can. Long before anybody looks at a property and decides if they want to build a home here or there, the developer is required to hire a soil scientist. That soil scientist is then tasked to go out to the site and basically use 5 variables that are established in the code. Some of the variables are slope, soil shape, soil depth, restrictive layers, etc. What comes back from that analysis, Mr. Sides, is a matrix that shows areas that should be protected and areas that are most suitable for development. And that's where kind of the push-pull starts. There's certain areas of the site that lend themselves better for homes, the streets, the utilities, etc. And hopefully all of those will fit in the unprotected area or the disturbable area. And if not, that's when the developer and the soil scientists start kind of tweaking how these protected zones look and where they will be on the property. And in this case, to make the numbers work, to have the amount of protected area within the development itself, there was a little arm that came out across the center of the rear yard. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but it did allow for the dwelling to be placed there, a patio, and overall the development of the 21 home sites. So there's a bit of a, let's say, art to it. I wouldn't say it's a good masterpiece, but that's why you're here, to make it better if we need to.
And in this particular case, I know a lot of times the natural resource protection area deals a lot with, really nasty slope type situations where you don't want to have a lot of runoff or, cause those kinds of problems. And I know, Mr. Side, you're looking at this, and so am I. We look at this and say, holy cow, it's a flat piece of ground. So, the risk, at least on the slope side of the equation, certainly doesn't appear to be much, if anything. It seems quite negligible. And I think it seems like that's what you're observing.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm observing. And the other thing I'm observing is, are we getting too bogged down with the way we plan these things? I know that's a way bigger question than what we can fix here tonight, but I mean, I don't know how many people have to look at a situation like this and say, well, let's not even bring it before the board. Why waste everybody's time with this? That's kind of where I'm going. I mean, I'm kind of a person who likes to simplify and make things as simple as possible instead of the other way around. And to me, this seems to be just a waste of time for us and for the homeowner. But that's not.
Well, I hear your comment, and in this one, you may look at it and say, well, wow, this seems kind of crazy that we're dealing with this. But I think we have to remember that in the beginning, when they start to develop these properties, these natural resource protection areas are put into place as best as people can think that they should be put in. Whether or not that's completely accurate or not, I don't know. But it is what it is. And so for us, we just now have to ask the question, kind of to bring us back around circle here. We have to ask the question whether or not we feel like it's this variance, their request to go ahead and put their fence in that particular area, if that's a reasonable request. So I hear what you're saying, Dan, and I wish we could somehow wave a magic wand and deal with that. But the reality is we're kind of following the protocol, and so we'll try and make this as painless as possible. Any other comments or questions from any of the other board members before we hear from the petitioner? If not, I would like to call the petitioner forward and ask that they state their name, address, relation to the property, and always remember, be sworn in by the court reporter before you present. I guess that would be Mr. Schessel. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name.
That's correct. You said it correctly. This is Drew Schessel at 16601 Colby Manors Court. I'm the owner.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing my case. As mentioned, I would like the board to consider a variance to erect a fence around the rear perimeter of my property located at 16601 Colby Manors Court, which would partially encroach on the natural resource protection area that runs through the back of our lot. There's several reasons I'm requesting a variance. First and foremost is safety. On our lot on Colby Manors Court, we're on the corner of Old Fairway Drive to the east and Manchester Road to the north. We're probably located on one of the few lots with triple frontage to such busy streets. Manchester Road and Old Fairway Drive are both heavily trafficked. I have 3 children ranging from elementary school to high school and 2 dogs. The ability to erect a fence would relieve some safety concerns associated with my children and pets running into traffic. Second is security. Because our lot is located at the entrance to the enclaves of Cherry Hills subdivision, we've already seen a number of people cutting through our backyard, walking to and from the direction of Wildwood Town Center. The fence would provide additional security for items on and around the rear of our house. Third, prior precedent. The Wildwood Board of Adjustment has previously granted 3 similar variances for homes at the manors at the enclaves, specifically on Colby Manors Court. One thing I would like to note is, and I didn't catch this earlier, and I apologize, my house is lot 1, and in this case, it's listed at lot 3, and I do apologize. I didn't catch that until you were reading the case file. So just for the record, I am at lot 1 of the manors. So back to the previous variances, lot 6, address is 16621 Colby Manors Court. The variance was approved after a fence was installed that encroached on the natural resource protection area. That variance was granted in either April or May of 2021. Lot 8, 16632 Colby Manors Court. A variance was granted in September of 2018 that allowed a homeowner to leave in place an already installed fence and fire pit located inside the natural resource protection area. Lot 9, located at 16628 Colby Manors Court. A variance was granted in August of 2017, allowing a fence to be installed in the natural resource protection area. Additionally, I'd like to say I've lived in Wildwood for 16 years, and I had no idea what the natural resource protection area was prior to purchasing this home in June of this year. As I researched it further, I understand the intent is to protect areas most susceptible to erosion due to development practices and to preserve other locations on property where stormwater runoff naturally drains. I would like to note that there's currently a piece of my property located inside the natural resource protection area. It's approximately 30 to 40 foot of asphalt that appears to have once been covered by the builder, but erosion has since exposed it. I can only assume this is a section of the cart path or parking lot dating back to the old Cherry Hills golf course days. While the erection of my fence will be a minimal disruption to the National Resource Protection Area, I would like the board to know that I intend to remove the old asphalt, further improving the ability for water to absorb into the soil, hopefully limiting further erosion. I do also plan to plant a number of trees and bushes to offset any disturbance this fence may cause. Additionally, there will be no trees removed during the installation of this fence. Lastly, I've spoken with many neighbors and residents who stated they support my request, including the president of the HOA at the Enclaves of Cherry Hills. And I hope that that was clearly shown in the online votes that took place prior to today's meeting. Thanks again for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Seschel. Are there any questions by the board members for Mr. Seschel? I don't see anything. I do want to ask you a couple questions. You did mention that there were some exposed asphalt on the property, and as part of your plan to put in the fence, you are planning to remove that asphalt. Is that correct?
Yes, the asphalt is not, it's not where the fence would go. It's further inside of that. If we could pull up the drawing again, you know, it's located, you know, at the back center of that green area, which is located, you know, kind of where it says, you know, in the green area where it says lot 1.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's pretty close to that, and it's, you know, somewhere 30 to 40 feet. And I haven't, you know, I haven't really explored it further. We just moved in on June 27th officially, but there's a big section back there where there's no grass that will grow. There's nothing. It's just exposed asphalt. You know, and in my opinion, removing that improves this as a true natural resource protection area, you know, allowing it to be more of a natural.
Okay, right. Yeah, it's hard to grow grass on asphalt, that's for sure. And plantings, you mentioned that you wanted to do some plantings as part of this project, but could you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Yeah, the previous homeowner made a pretty hefty investment in some, you know, they're kind of the elevated, I call them berms that have, you know, evergreens on them. And prior to closing on the house, it appears that there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 of those trees that are dead, that are currently in that natural resource protection area. And I really like the fact that they're there, because it does, you know, Manchester Road there's a lot of traffic, and there's people that come out of Old Fairway and they make a left towards Town Center, and they, you know, they're flooring it, and it's loud, and it's there's a lot of activity back there, and that evergreen provides additional privacy back there. So part of my plan in this backyard is to replace those trees that are dead. I don't believe the pictures that you showed of the backyard had that landscaping. I think it's relatively new, but you know, there's a lot of trees that are dead back there that I do intend to replace, because I do want privacy from Manchester Road.
Okay. So you'd be fine with that as a condition to your variance request to remove the asphalt and to replace those trees. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last thing that I have is, no, actually I have two more things. One is on the drawing where it showed the natural resource protection area, it showed that your fence would actually kind of zip over onto your neighbor's property. Is that accurate?
That is correct. And I've gotten approval from that neighbor to do that.
Okay. Yeah, is there anything, I'm going to ask the department this question. Is there anything in particular that we would need or the city would need to, I don't know, document the fact that we're allowing a property owner to put a fence on someone else's property?
Actually, Mr. Chair, you're not. What you're doing is granting a segment of the fence to be within the natural resource protection standard. That area that's shown in that green highlighted location, that's all you're doing.
Okay, all right, so we don't need to consider the other thing.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you for that. And then finally, when you put your fence in, what kind of disturbance are you thinking you're really going to have as you put the fence in? I mean, are we just digging holes? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, 0. It's 6-inch holes per post.
Yeah, okay.
It's minimal.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Any other questions by any of the other board members for Mr. Seschel? Mr. Rubus?
The fence on the western side of your property, are you just going to use your neighbor's existing fence to restrict that part of your property?
That
Or
is
are you actually
correct.
putting, okay, so you're not putting another fence
No,
up along, okay. So the neighbor is just giving you permission to hook onto his fence.
that is correct.
Okay, that's what I thought it looked like.
Okay, are there any other questions by any of the other board members? Okay, I don't see any. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor to any speakers in the audience who would want to speak in favor or opposition to the request.
And Mr. Chair, we've not been able to unpromote Mr. Collier and then re-promote him. So obviously he'd like to speak on the matter, but I will also say that anyone else that's an attendee that would like to speak on this particular matter, if you would use the raise hand feature, we'll promote you as each individual has completed their presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So Mr. Collier, we'll hear from you again. Again, state your name, address, relationship to the property, and then you'll need to be sworn in.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Greg Collier, 355 Cherry Hills, Meadows Drive. I have no relationship to Drew. Do I need to be re-sworn in?
Yes, please.
Gotcha.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so question. So the trees and all the parts and pieces that currently exist in the NRPA area, who's responsible for upkeep on those trees in that area? Is it the city of Wildwood or is it the homeowner?
Mr. Collier, any trees that are on private property are the private property owner's responsibility. There may be a few of the trees along Manchester Road that are in an easement to the homeowners association. I'd have to check the plans and get back to you on that. Thank you.
The reason I ask, so if you were to go to Google, you'd see that where Drew is proposing to put his fence, that there would now be some trees that are there currently inside his property line, right? So the reason I was asking the question is if the city is responsible for upkeep and maintenance on the trees, how do they get access to the trees if they're inside of Drew's fence line? If Drew is responsible for upkeep and maintenance of the trees and the foliage that's in that area, then there would certainly be no issue there. I'm just trying to get an understanding of that.
The best thing I can tell you, Mr. Collier, is that the trees that the city is maintaining right now in that area are the street trees that are part of the sidewalk.
Got it. So those will almost certainly be Drew's responsibility then, right? got it. Okay. Yep, no issue. I don't have an issue with this. I support it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Collier. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the matter? Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. At this time, I'd like to thank Mr. Schessel and offer an opportunity to hear an oral presentation by the department on their report. Is there anyone who would like to hear that? Seeing no request, if the department would like to provide any final comments, that this would be the time to do that.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Chair.
Please.
The department would note that the department is in support of this request. And I would also like to make a correction. In the report, it states that there were 3 other properties in subdivision that requested variances similar to this pertaining to fences, and one was denied. I did just verify, and it looks like, although it was just listed in my database as denial, it looks like there was an associated irrigation system that was denied, but the fence was allowed to remain within the natural resource protection area. That being said, given that fences tend to have minimal disturbance in the area, and that the department is not opposed. And generally, the city tries to, in cases of natural resource protection area, the city tends to try to have an even exchange of buildable area for natural resource protection area. But given that this is just a fence and it's just going to require fence posts, it isn't necessarily something that we would recommend requiring. However, if the board did want to require that, then we would request that the applicant submits a revised deed to have recorded with St. Louis County. But given that the lot is encumbered by 3 triple frontages on 3 separate roads, the department does not find this to be unreasonable. Thank you. Unless you have any other questions for myself or Mr. Vunich, that concludes our comments.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. At this time, I'd like to just provide an opportunity for the board members to make any comments, observations, ask any final questions before we close and move for a vote. Any comments, questions? Okay, I think everyone did a good job of explaining this particular case, so we will close the proceeding for a vote. And I would like to ask for a motion to either approve, deny, or approve with conditions.
I'll make a motion to approve.
As is, or with any conditions?
As is.
As is. Okay, do we have a second?
I will second.
Lee, seconds. Thank you, sir. And at this time, we will go ahead and vote. Mr. Rubus, how do you?
Yes.
Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Sides, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Lee, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Congratulations, Mr. Schessel. Your variance request has been approved. Okay, at this point, I think we're ready to have our 3rd case read into the records. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the board, the 3rd case tonight is BA 25-22 Douglas Kraus, 18474 Hankin Valley Estates Drive, Wildwood, Missouri 63069. Requests an exception to the natural resource protection standards for the purpose of constructing a detached garage 720 square feet in size upon the property located at 18474 Hankin Valley Estates Drive, locator number 26X 110052, Lot 3 of Hankin Valley Estates subdivision, requiring relocation of a portion of the natural resource protection line and its associated 25-foot foundation setback line. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 420.200 Natural Resource Protection Standards and Procedures of the Subdivision and Development Regulations of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code as applied to property located in the NU Non-Urban Resident District and Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Resident District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance. This particular request does include an exchange of protected, non-protected area, which would give a no net loss or gain in this regard. The property is located in Ward 6. Also, Mr. Chair, the department would like to introduce into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained regarding this particular request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any testimony, exhibits, plats, or other items offered as evidence as part of tonight's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Now for a presentation, Ms. Ripito.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the board, as Mr. Vunich stated, this property is located at 18474 Henkin Valley Estates. As you can see, this is in the southwest quadrant of the city. The overview map illustrates that this property is very similar in size to the larger acre lots in this area. It's a 4-acre lot. And if you look more closely at the property, you can see that there is about a 70-foot drop from the property, with the highest point being at the rear. What you're looking at now is the site plan that was provided by the applicant. It shows the location of the home and related improvements. It also shows the location of the proposed garage, as well as the natural resource protection line that exists. And then shown in blue is the proposed change to the natural resource protection line to allow for the garage. You can also see that the existing driveway is in the natural resource protected area rather than in the buildable area, and that exists today. The next image is an image of the garage provided by the petitioner. This is a photograph of the home that's on site from the driveway, looking up towards the home. The proposed garage would be to the left, which we will take a closer look at. Directly across the street, as you can see, it's not developed. And then this is actually from the street looking up to the house, so you can see that the visibility is limited. This is looking down the street towards the neighboring properties. So as you go up the driveway, this is the location of where the proposed garage would be located over here where the trampoline is. And as you can see, it's relatively clear and level there. This is from the driveway looking to the rear of the property. And you can see, that there's quite a bit of a slope existing just beyond the house, and that the tree line comes pretty close to the house. This is the other side of the property, the only other area that has a buildable area that could contain a garage. And with that, that concludes the department's presentation, unless any members of the board have any questions of Mr. Vunich or myself. And I believe the applicant is here to elaborate on their request.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. Do we have any questions for the department from any of the board members before we hear from the applicant? I don't see any questions.
Well, yeah, I
I
do.
do.
So Joe, when you read that description about the resource protection thing, you said a zero net loss or gain. Does that mean it has no effect?
Um, In principle, yes, Mr. Sides, but I think what Melanie and I intended to convey with that statement is that the petitioner is asking to encroach into an area that's now protected, but in return, he is willing to dedicate an area that is now unprotected in an equal amount to be protected. So there's no net loss or gain. So if he's disturbing, let's say 720 square feet for the garage, the petitioner is willing to give 720 feet, 20 feet back in another location.
Okay.
Mr. Rubus.
The driveway that encroaches, will that be part of this variance to clean up that driveway encroaching into the area? And is that part of the 720 feet?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Please.
The majority of the driveway that encroaches will be encompassed by this variance. It would be included. Let me pull the site plan back up to give you a better understanding. Let's see. Okay. Here we are. If you look at the site plan that was provided, you can see the black dotted line here that represents the existing natural resource protection line, and the dotted blue line represents what they're proposing. As you can see, there's a bit of a parking pad up here. This parking pad would connect to the proposed garage. So yes, this existing area right here would then no longer be an existing nonconformity. Like it would no longer be in violation. So that would clear that up. That is correct.
But do we have to increase the part that the garage is 720 feet?
Correct. So the natural resource protection area is actually showing an exchange of 1,500 square feet. This blue line goes all the way around the garage and then back to the rear of the house and goes around. And so therefore that would encompass that area. That would be included in the newly proposed natural resource protected area.
Okay, so we're removing the whole natural resource protection area from that side of the house and moving it to the other side.
Yeah, there's shown a little snippet here along the rear of the house and towards the other side of the house. And so they're willing to protect the area that would now be located outside of this blue line, as opposed to outside of the black line that was originally shown,
Okay.
which all in all contains more trees than the area on the other side that you saw with the existing driveway.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the department? If not, I think we're ready to hear from the petitioner. So if they would state their name, address, relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter, this is the time.
Yes, thank you. Douglas Kraus, 18474 Henkin Valley Estates Drive, Wildwood, Missouri, and I am the owner.
All right.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kraus, go ahead.
Yeah, so like Miss Melanie said, we're working to build a garage on the left side of the property. As you can see, the driveway already, for some reason unknown to me, the line goes right through the driveway. So not only moving the line will correct that issue with it going through the driveway, but will allow us to build a garage in the really the only flat part of the yard. And then by doing so, we will obviously trade the same amount of space. I know keeping natural resources critical in our area, so wanted to make sure that we were giving back as much as we could. So we'll be able to do that in both the back and the right side of the property, as stated.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Are there any questions for the petitioner from the board members, from any of the board members? I don't see any questions being requested, so thank you, Mr. Kraus, for sharing that. And at this time, we're going to open the floor to any speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor or opposition to the request. And we'll give just a moment to see if that happens.
And Mr. Chair, if the attendee would like to speak, if you'd use the raise hand feature, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Going once. All right, I do not see any raised hands, so we will move on and offer the opportunity to hear an oral report, the presentation of the department's report, if anyone would like to hear that. If you would, raise your hand, otherwise we'll move on from there. I see no hands, so we are going to close the proceeding for a vote. Before we do that, are there any final comments or questions by any of the board members before we vote? Okay, I don't see anything. Therefore, we will close the proceeding and we will now call for a vote, a motion to approve. Oh, sorry, Melanie, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you don't mind, I'd like to give a few final comments in regards to this before you close the proceedings for a vote.
Oh, yes, I kind of didn't let you do that now, did I? So why don't we go ahead and back up just a step? Please do.
Thank you. The department would just like to note that they're in support of this request, given that it is an even exchange of space for the natural resource protection area. It's just essentially a relocation and would be saving more trees by relocating it. The variance would also bring the existing driveway in that area into compliance, rather than being a violation of the natural resource protection area. Additionally, the location of the garage would also utilize the existing driveway, whereas locating it anywhere else on the property would require additional impervious service to get the driveway to the new location of the proposed garage. And this will have minimal visual impact on neighboring properties, given the wooded area surrounding the property. And with that is all the comments that the department has, unless any of the members have any questions. Mr. Vunich and I would be happy to answer as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. All right, we'll give one last opportunity for any board members to ask any questions before we vote. Looks like everyone is pretty well satisfied. So at this time, I'd like to ask someone to make a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions. Mr. Lee.
Going to give somebody else a chance, but I will make a motion to approve as presented.
Very good. Thank you, sir. And then we need a second here. Mr. Rubis.
I'll second that.
I'll second that. Very good. Thank you. So let us vote. Mr. Sides, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Rubis, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Lee, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I also vote yes to approve your variance request as submitted. Congratulations, Mr. Kraus, and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that wraps up that. We have one more case to hear tonight. And Mr. Vunich, if you would be kind enough to read that into the record, we would appreciate that.
Certainly will, sir, and thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the board, the last item tonight is BA 26-22, Michelle Cook, President, the Brothers of the Christian Schools of St. Louis District, doing business as La Salle Retreat Center, 2101 Rue de La Salle Drive, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038, care of Gina Toko, law offices of Toko Conley and Associates, PC, 300 Ozark Trail Drive, Suite 208, Baldwin, Missouri, 63011. Request an exception to the minimum lot area requirements for purpose of subdividing an existing 23-acre lot containing an existing sewage treatment facility, which is located at 3303 Whitsett Fork Road, St. Louis County, locator number 26V I30012, survey 0766, section 13, township 44, range 3, into 3 lots. The request would authorize an existing sewage treatment facility be located on a 1-acre lot in lieu of the 3-acre minimum area required by the current zoning district designations. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.070 floodplain district regulations and 415.090 NU non-urban resident district of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance. This particular property is located in Ward 6. And Mr. Chair, the department again would like to introduce into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the department relative to this request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any testimony, exhibits, plats, maps, or other items that are introduced as part of evidence tonight at this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. And so at this time, we'll have Ms. Ripito give us a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, as Mr. Vunich read into record, this the location of the site is 3303 Whitsetts Fork. It is located in the southeast quadrant of the city. Okay, there we go. As you can see from the overview, it's the property runs along the south of Highway 109 with frontage all along 109, and then Whitsetts Fork bisects it partway through the property. As you can see here, much of the property is in the floodplain or floodway. If you take a closer look at the property, it is actually relatively flat through a lot of the property, but has a steeper slope on the northern section of the property. Across the street is the school and the retreat center. And that's a better view of Whitsetts Fork where it bisects the property. Much of the property is wooded along the perimeter of it. This is taken from the pathway in front of the school. You can see down, much of the property isn't visible because of the tree line. Looking either direction, this is looking north on 109 and the previous one was looking south. This photograph right here is taken from Whitsetts Fork, looking to the north. You can see the school fields across the street there. And this is actually, the property is located on both sides of Whitsetts Fork. This is a better view of the school and looking down Highway 109 and looking south on 109. The school and the retreat center. This is the southern section of the property to the south of Whitsetts Fork that's currently being used by the equine assistance. And this is looking to the north. As you can see, there's access here to the waste treatment facility from Whitsetts Fork to the north. This is also the unpaved path going to the waste facility that you can see up in the trees, pretty well hidden from view. It's a fenced in area, and this is from the waste facility or the waste treatment facility looking across the street towards the school. And with that, that concludes the department's presentation. And unless the board has any questions, the applicant is here to present further on the request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ripto. Are there any questions for the department from any of the board members? Mr. Rubus.
Yes, is this an aeration type treatment facility?
This is a waste treatment facility.
I mean, it's not septic, is it an aerator?
I would defer to Mr. Vunich for further elaboration on the actual facility.
Mr. Rubus, it's an older facility. It is not an aeration type. It's a mechanical treatment. And so it's much like a small treatment plant that MSD would operate.
Any other questions for the department? Yes, Mr. Sides.
So who uses the waste treatment center? Who does it service?
Mr. Sides, it provides wastewater treatment to the LaSalle Springs Middle School and to LaSalle Institute.
And
Okay.
to make sure I'm understanding this right, they're wanting to develop into 3-acre plots, correct? They want to shrink the size of the waste facility down to 1 acre and keep the facility as is.
That's a good synopsis, sir. The code requires 3 acres as a minimum lot area for the wastewater treatment facility. The owner of the property would prefer that it be 1 acre versus 3 acres.
So the other question I would have is, I mean, it seems like, unless I'm missing something, we don't really have, do we have even a layout of how they want to divide this piece of property? I mean, if we're going to vote on a proposed breakdown of 23 acres into 3 acres, shouldn't we see some sort of a plan?
Mr. Sides, I think Ms. Ripto is. As part of your packet of information.
Is it on the subdivision sort of plat map? Is that where it's at? Or I was kind of looking for that as well. Although I'm not sure if that's relevant for our decision tonight, but it is maybe a question.
Mr. Chair, if I may, as part of the packet of information that was prepared by the department, about in the middle of it, there is a plat sheet that reads 3303 Witsit Fork Road subdivision. And that shows the proposed 3 lots as the property owner, equine assisted therapy in the school district would prefer.
And no offense, Mr. Vunich, but as I age, even with good glasses, it's a little bit hard to read that. It appears as if Wissit's Fork, the driveway sort of is a boundary for the properties. And there's a southern part and there's a northern part. And then there's a little block there where the waste treatment is. Am I reading that? Or I think I'm reading that right, but I'm not sure.
Generally speaking, Mr. Chair, members of the board, the private street, Witsit Fork Road, is the dividing line for what is described as the equine assisted therapy lot. The rectangle is the intended 1 acre lot for the wastewater treatment facility that exists. And then the remainder, that which is to the, I would say, southwest or south of the wastewater treatment facility, and then north along Route 109 is the remaining lot.
Okay, so that 1 acre lot that they're requesting is sort of in that northern lot is what it kind of looks like.
Yes, it's north of Witsit Fork Road. And
Yeah.
Ms. Ripto's trying to get us there.
There we go.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. Oh, I see. Lot C or whatever. I guess it's, yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Does that take care of your question, Dan?
That helps. So it's 3 lots total? Is that what I'm?
Yes, on the approximately 23 acres, the owner would like to subdivide it into 3 separate lots.
So then would the purpose of, I assume that you could build on those lots. I don't know. I mean, I can't tell without really scrutinizing the flood zone, but maybe there's a place to build. So if you build, who are they planning on using that treatment center plant too?
I think the applicant petitioner could probably address this as well, but the lot that is being proposed to be sold to equine assisted therapy, that which is south of Witsit Fork Road, they lease that property now and use it for fenced pasture area in support of their therapy activities. The 1 acre lot where the wastewater treatment plant is located, it is encumbered by almost in its entirety by floodplain. The plant is elevated. It was constructed to meet county requirements at that time in 1992. The remaining lot is a lot of floodway and floodplain. And I'd be hard pressed to say if anything could be built there other than, let's say, a pasture area or whatever livestock or horses might be interested. But there's a lot of floodplain and floodway.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vunich. Any other questions for the department? Okay, I don't see any more hands, so.
I got, hold on, just 1 second. So.
All right, well,
Wait a
Mr.
minute.
Sides, yeah.
Just to help me get a better understanding of this waste treatment plant, is it all below ground?
Generally speaking, yes, there are some portions of the equipment that are above grade, but the treatment facility is below grade. It's a system of tanks or containers, however you'd like to describe them.
So it's obviously in the floodplain below ground.
To a certain degree, yes. As I say, if you look at the topography of the area, you can see that it was elevated to address concerns that St. Louis County had about location. To my knowledge, and again, the owner of LaSalle Institute or Ms. Toko, the representative for them, may be able to verify this, but I don't remember it flooding. Even in that horrible rain we had in August a few years ago that caused the car to float down Route 109.
Yeah, I was just trying to picture that in my head. Okay, that's all I had.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Joe, one question I have is if this goes forth, the Exhibit B, which is the request, is basically to subdivide the lots. Does this go back through planning and zoning and council to do a subdivision, or is this something that staff would work through and create the conditions?
The minor subdivision, which is considered any division of land 4 lots or less, would not go to planning and zoning commission, but would go to city council. The city council would introduce an ordinance for the division, and then 2 weeks or a month later would approve the legislation allowing the division to be recorded.
So what we're doing is then, if we support this, it would move forth with staff recommendations to council and council would vote on it.
That's correct, sir.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions for the department? Okay, if not, at this time, I'd like to call the petitioner forward and ask that they state their name, address, relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter.
Good evening. My name is Gina Toko. I am a board member for the LaSalle Retreat Center, and I'm an attorney here in St. Louis.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you so much. I think it's
Mr. Chair.
important.
If I could interrupt, Ms. Toko, is there anyone else on the list of attendees that will be presenting in association with you?
Ms. Cook, the president, is here. Unless necessary, I don't anticipate that she will be speaking, but she is present and in attendance if necessary.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I promoted everybody that needed to be. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think it's very important for this body to have a little bit of a timeline on what's going on, to understand that we're really not looking at any different use for this property. So if you'll indulge me for just a bit, and I apologize for any duplicity that's in the determination of issues that you've already received. LaSalle Institute was created back in 1882. And the deed for this entire parcel of property on both sides of 109, the 23 or 24 acres that we're talking about, plus the land that the retreat center is located on, was actually deeded back in 1882, recorded with the St. Louis County Recorder of Deeds in 1979. Originally at that time, the name of the entity was the LaSalle Institute. In December of 1979, the LaSalle Institute changed its name to the Brothers of the Christian Schools of the St. Louis District, and the appropriate amended articles of corporation were filed with the Missouri Secretary of State. Since 1979 and through the present date, that corporation is a not-for-profit corporation and has remained in good standing. The Brothers of the Christian School District, the Christian Schools of the St. Louis District, which for ease of this meeting I will refer to as the Brothers, engaged in negotiations with Rockwood School District in mid-1992. And the purpose of those preliminary conversations was in anticipation of building and constructing LaSalle Springs Middle School. And they negotiated with the Brothers for the parcel of land that the sewage treatment facility is currently located on. And all of those approvals were long before my involvement with this organization. I think, as Mr. Vunich mentioned, that was all done and approved through St. Louis County. And there is a contractual relationship between the Rockwood School District and the Brothers, to the extent that they actually created a Missouri corporation called the Rockwood LaSalle Private Sewage Treatment Corporation, which was registered with the Missouri Secretary of State in 1992. As a result of that arrangement, Rockwood School District has a long-term 50-year lease with the Brothers to operate that sewage treatment facility. Part of those negotiations included the lease, as I mentioned, and some covenants and indentures that govern the rights and responsibilities of the parties, which I will not belabor you with today. But that sewage treatment plant was created and is currently sitting on less than a half acre of land. So we are not seeking to reduce the footprint of the current sewage treatment facility. In addition, the sewage treatment facility, as Mr. Vunich mentioned, services LaSalle Springs Middle School and also services the retreat center. Fast forward to August of 2012, And equine assisted therapy was desirous of leasing some of the land that was basically just raw ground. Again, as Mr. Bunich mentioned, a lot in the floodplain and really of no use, frankly, to anyone, except it served as a wonderful pasture for equine assisted therapy. So we have 3 not-for-profit corporations that are sort of sharing these resources here in the city of Wildwood. And both LaSalle Retreat Center, the Brothers, and Equine Assisted Therapy are great friends of Wildwood. They are very involved in the community, and this has been a long-lasting relationship with them. In the fall of last year, Equine Assisted Therapy expressed an interest in actually purchasing the property that they are currently leasing from the Brothers. And as part of those discussions, we began talking about the sewage treatment facility. And again, I was not involved in that transaction back in 1992 or 93, but it's really unclear to me why Rockwood School District didn't buy the land, or that the land wasn't transferred to them back at that time. So in the spirit of having to subdivide the lot, this 24 acres across from the retreat center, so as to accommodate the sale of the requested land to equine assisted therapy, the board began discussing, can we now carve out the property upon which the sewage treatment facility is located and get that owned by Rockwood School District? So my office had some negotiations with Paul Northington and Mr. Branson in-house at Rockwood School District. They've got counsel Michael Reagan and I who have been working together, and the Brothers, if this is approved, intends to transfer that 1 acre lot to Rockwood School District so that they can be solely responsible to do whatever needs to be done in order to be in compliance with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and to fully own and operate that deal, sort of unwind the transaction that we have so that they can own that property. So that's the history of why we are where we are. And in speaking with Rockwood School District, they don't want or need 3 acres of land in order to own and operate that sewage treatment facility. Their preference and desire is to only have 1 acre to give them the necessary ingress, egress, whatever it is that they need off of the land from Wissett's Fork. So we're not changing the use. We're not subdividing to build. We are subdividing to have equine assisted therapy own the property that they are already leasing for its current use. We are looking to subdivide the property so that Rockwood School District can own and operate the sewage treatment facility in its current use. And then the Brothers would retain the rest of that land for whatever purpose that it will serve. There's been some conversations that down the road, it may serve as a pasture, either for equine assisted therapy or for another organization. If we are forced to subdivide that acreage into 3 acre lots, because of the property that equine assisted therapy has already contracted with the Brothers to buy, that contract was finally executed in February, then we give 3 acres to Rockwood School District. The remaining land that would be owned by the Brothers would be landlocked. We would not have access to that in order to give Rockwood School District the 3 acres. And frankly, at that point in time, I'm not sure that they would take 3 acres because they're simply not interested in doing it. So in order to avoid any hardship for the remaining land for the Brothers and to try and accomplish the objectives of these other not-for-profit organizations, we are seeking a variance from the minimum 3 acre lot requirements.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Toko. Do we have any questions for Ms. Toko from the board members?
Yeah.
Mr. Sides.
Yeah. So, Ms. Toko, you just said you've been in contact with Rockwoods about this deal, so they're involved also, correct?
Please unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, Mr. Vunich had required that as part of our packet for the subdivision that we submit an acknowledgement to the city of Wildwood regarding our conversations with Rockwood School District. That has been submitted and was executed by Paul Northington.
So I guess one question would be, why do you feel like you need to deal with this whole area right now, other than just dealing with the part that the equine center wants to buy?
That is certainly our plan B, Mr. Sides. However, because in accordance with the contracts that are already in place between Rockwood School District and the brothers, Rockwood School District is solely responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of that facility. And so as we are sort of coming to the city of Wildwood to seek a subdivision of the property, it was a logical time for us to see if we could subdivide and not only accomplish the sale of the land to equine assisted therapy, but also get the land to Rockwood School District, especially since they are interested in having that land.
I can see that. I can see a potential problem if Rockwood takes over that sewage treatment place in 1 acre size. I assume that transaction would have to come for the board, I guess, or city council or somebody. But one of the problems that I would be worried about is before I would want anything like that to go through, I would like to see that re-engineered, or at least an engineer to sign off that that treatment center is doing the job that it's supposed to be doing, even for just Rockwoods, which is a sizable number of people. And there's always a chance they may add on to that school and that kind of stuff. So it seems to me if we're locking it into the 1 acre now, we're locking things in place in case that treatment center has to be, let's say an engineer decides it needs to be 3 acres. In other words, wouldn't it be better to get all this figured out at once if you want to do it that way, and include some sort of a reassessment of that facility before you sell?
Mr. Sides, the only thing that I can tell you is that this sewage treatment facility is under grave scrutiny by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Part of my communication with Rockwood School District in discussing with them the amount of acreage that they would need, because we went to them explaining this transaction and we asked them, how much of this property do you need if you were to own it? And they responded that 1 acre would be sufficient for them to do whatever they needed to do, including any updates or modifications that may be required by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. So that 1 acre did not originally come from us. That was the ask from Rockwood School District.
Okay, so they asked for that, but where'd they come up with that number? I mean, did they get an engineer to sign off that 1 acre would be enough?
Mr. Sides, I wish I could answer more for you. All I know is that they are working with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources to make sure that they are in compliance with all of the regulations that they need for that sewage treatment facility. And I can only infer from my conversations with them that that conversation has already been had. I have not personally spoken with the Department of Natural Resources. It is not something that I have handled because Rockwood School District has been handling those activities.
As a lawyer, from what I watch on TV, isn't that hearsay?
Okay, well,
Just
it
kidding.
may be.
That's all I have for you.
All right, Mr. Lee, we're gonna hand the ball off to you.
All right, so I want to try to reel everybody back in here. The request for the improvement or use is Exhibit B. All they're asking for is that they can subdivide the lots. They're not even defining the area with this request. So it has to go through council, as Joe had mentioned earlier. So we're basically giving them the opportunity to present this to council. Council will decide on how this is carved up ultimately. Joe, did I speak?
Well, I would just add, Mr. Lee, that if the board were not to grant the reduced minimum lot area and the department was to present a plat that showed the sewage treatment facility on a 1 acre lot, the city council could not approve it. It would be in violation of the regulations. So your role is very important in many ways.
Mr. Lee, just to further respond, my understanding in working with the city of Wildwood procedurally on these issues is that we have submitted the subdivision plat as requested in this petition for variance. The acreage, the 10 to 12 acreage for equine assisted therapy, the carve out of the 1 acre for the sewage treatment facility for Rockwood School District, and then the rest. And my understanding was that by filing our petition for variance simultaneously with that subdivision plat, is that if the Board of Adjustments grants the variance, then the plat would go on to City Council for approval of the plat as submitted. So I believe chronologically we needed to come to this body first to see if we would be able to get the variance from 3 acres to 1 acre before we could submit the subdivision plat to the City Council.
Okay, so that's a good clarification. So the Exhibit B as written includes the survey as a preliminary plat, basically.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. That's basically all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Rubus.
Yes, is the brothers, if this goes through and we have the sale to Rockwood, are the brothers going to continue to utilize the treatment facility?
Yes, sir, they will.
So Rockwood will have to work out a deal with the brothers as far as their use.
That's correct, sir. And again, those conversations have already been had about the brothers' usage is a fraction of the usage of the total facility. I think it's around 10% is what's stated in some of the documents that I've reviewed. So they don't have any issues with regard to the brothers or LaSalle Retreat Center continuing to use that facility.
Okay, the whole purpose then, what we're deciding is, do we want to grant a variance for a 1 acre parcel in a 3 acre minimum area?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Right, because if I understand this correctly, to be compliant with the current zoning ordinances, that needs to be on a 3 acre parcel.
That's correct.
And help us understand, Ms. Toko, why can't you do that?
Why can't we do what?
Make it a 3 acre parcel.
Well, first and foremost, the catalyst for this whole conversation is to enable Rockwood School District to own that parcel. And Rockwood School District has represented to us that they are not desirous of owning any more than 1 acre of land. My conversations with them was that they would take 1 acre, they don't want any more, and if that is the case, then we would be, I don't want to say stuck with the status quo, which is an arrangement that is contractual in nature, that has an expiration date at the end of this lease term, and the continued use for the school district is necessary.
So, I understand that maybe they don't want to have more than 1 acre, but I would think that the school district would want to be a good neighbor with the city or whatever, and try and be compliant with the zoning ordinances and so forth. So, it seems interesting to me that they wouldn't go ahead and accept a 3 acre parcel versus a 1 acre parcel. I mean, they're the ones who need their waste treatment center. I don't want to be weird about it, but it would seem very odd to me that they would not want to do this because of the size of that lot.
Mr. Sprunger, I don't want to lead this body or anyone that may be listening to this that Rockwood School District has done anything wrong at all.
Sure.
We approached them with this opportunity and we said, we are subdividing our land. If we can accomplish a transfer of the land on which the sewage treatment facility is located to you, what do your needs look like in that regard? So, it seems like Rockwood is being made to be the bad guy and not being in compliance. And I don't want that to be the case at all, because that's not what's happening. We are all trying to be good neighbors and work together and have the most efficient use of that land. And 3 acres, based upon our conversations to date, seems to be a surplus of land for Rockwood School District. And it is likely that if this board does not grant our request for variance, that our subdivision plat is going to be amended to divide the property at Wissett's Fork, to transfer the parcel that we are contracted to transfer to equine assisted therapy, for the brothers to retain the rest of the land in accordance with the status quo. That is not our first choice.
Sure. Okay. So that's a second option that it's an option available to you, right?
It is.
Just to have 2 lots instead of 3 lots. Yeah.
But the second lot would be owned by the brothers and leased to Rockwood School District, rather than having them be able to own the land that they are basically operating the sewage treatment plant from.
Mr. Rubus.
Just a point of clarification, the 3 acre lot minimum in this area, that is as a result of, we're saying we can't subdivide unless it's 3 acre lots. It has nothing to do with waste treatment plants required 3 acres. Is that correct?
Mr. Vunich.
Mr. Rubitz, that's a very good question, because the same regulation that says that this particular plant needs to be on 3 acres says that if it's part of a subdivision and placed in common ground, it can be as small as 10,000 square feet.
So
from the perspective of the regulation, I don't think it necessarily looks at if there's an expansion potential or not. It's just saying that under certain circumstances, it has to be 3 acres. Under others, it could be as small as 10,000 square feet.
Okay, that kind of puts it in a different perspective.
So can we tease that out for just a second, Joe? If we went down the path, the 3 acre lot concept, I think we all get that. What would it look like if it were as small as 10,000 square foot and some common ground? I don't know if I understand that very well. Can you help us get that?
Well, the 10,000 square foot limit would certainly accommodate the size of the plant, and in my opinion, also allow for a certain level of expansion. The 10,000 square foot minimum lot area is kind of, you see it kind of through a lot of the different components of our zoning regulations, particularly in the R district for certain types of activities. I don't know why that's a particular magic number, but it doesn't just appear for this particular type of use. And so from the perspective of the department, if the plant was placed in a common ground area, it becomes a little bit more onerous, not only on LaSalle Institute and the school district, but as part of the subdivision, now equine assisted therapy must be part of the agreement because they are part of the subdivision. And from that particular organization's perspective, they're using it for pasture. They're not going to build upon it. And so I could see why they would not want to be necessarily drawn into an agreement to manage and upkeep a wastewater treatment facility.
Okay. But to be compliant, I mean, so let me ask it this way. Let's take that 1 acre lot that has the wastewater treatment thing on it. Are you saying that it could be a 10,000 square foot? Okay, an acre's what, 44,000 square feet? I don't know, something like that.
Very close to that.
Yeah, okay, so thereabouts. Okay, so to be compliant, they could have a 10,000 square foot area with a 34,000 square foot common ground area, and that would meet the zoning or the zoning requirements?
If they were to establish common ground as part of the 3-lot subdivision or the subdivision,
Yeah.
it could be as small as 10,000 square feet, but it could be an acre.
Oh.
However, I'm sorry. However, if it were common ground, as Mr. Vunich stated, all lot owners would have to participate and contribute. And so that is not an option for us. Our primary transaction was to sell the acreage that equine assisted therapy is currently leasing to them. We have a contract to do that. We are obligated to do that. We fully intend to do that. The brothers were simply trying to piggyback onto this transaction. What I believe is correcting what I don't think was done properly back in 1992 to get to Rockwood School District the land upon which this sewage treatment facility was located. That is the whole catalyst. We're not changing uses. We're not we're not building anything. We are simply trying to change the name on the deed for this parcel of land to the brothers, from the brothers to the brothers and Rockwood School District and equine assisted therapy.
Right, yeah, I think thank you for that. I think we sort of get that. I think we're kind of wrestling with, is there a way to do this so that it's compliant with the current zoning? And if I understand correctly, that if you did the common ground approach, the plant would actually be in the common ground, right? Yeah, okay, and since it's common ground, then there's really only 2 lots in that transaction because the common ground is the common ground between the 2 lots. Okay, I see. Okay, thank you for explaining that. I think I got my head wrapped around that now.
Oh, and Mr. Sprunger, just to follow up on that thought. So if we were able to do exactly that, which is compliance with the ordinance, the only thing that we have done is burdened equine assisted therapy. We've done exactly what we are asking you to do, a 1 acre per se common ground, which is compliant with the statute. We simply want to do that, only allow equine assisted therapy to not be responsible, to allow the brothers to not be responsible for that sewage treatment facility.
Right, and yeah, and to have the Rockwood School District take over responsibility.
Yes, sir.
Okay, And in this particular case, for the department, are there any other concerns about the size of it, or, you know, concerns about it being in a floodplain, or any of those kinds of things? Or is it just, no, we're just sort of tied up with this, the way that the zoning ordinances are written? Not that they're bad, but just, is that just the issue here?
As Ms. Toko mentioned, this particular plant was permitted by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Given
Right.
its size, the capacity, it requires monthly inspections to be sent to MDNR so that they can guarantee it's in a functional and operational state. So yes, the department isn't concerned about the plant per se, or if it need to be expanded, because again, if the school were to add classrooms or increase the student population and the plant had to be expanded, then MDNR would be part of that permitting process to ensure that the plant's expanded to the appropriate size. And if there's not enough ground on an acre, then obviously they would go to LaSalle Institute and look to the property to the north and adjust it in. So there's options out there. So really, it's just to you all as the board tonight, is it 3 acres or is it 1 acre?
Right. Okay. Okay. And if you made it 3 acres, I think one of the arguments was to make it 3 acres, you'd have to basically almost landlock that northern component. Otherwise, you'd have to get a curb cut off of 109 to gain access to it, right? Yeah, and good luck with that, right? So
Route 109 in that particular location has some characteristics that might not lend itself to another access point. And certainly that would have to be explored. But as we know, traffic on Route 109 travels at a high rate of speed, regardless of the speed limit. And so we would want to take that into account.
right. No, you're right. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Are there any other questions for Ms. Toko, or for that matter, for the department?
Yes.
Mr. Sides.
Yeah. So Ms. Toko, you said that this was signed off by the Department of Natural Resources?
The Department of Natural Resources, I have not had any communications with them directly. As Mr. Vunich stated, Rockwood School District is responsible for all communications, inspections, coordinating all of those things with the MDNR. What I do have is correspondence from the Rockwood School District that should be part of your packet, but that basically acknowledges our communications and what it is that we are doing in seeking a variance from the 3 acre lot requirements.
Yeah, well, that really wouldn't mean a whole lot to me. I'm just looking through the packet and I see all these recommendations from MoDOT, spot. I see everything except Department of Natural Resources.
That was not something that we were requested or required to provide. If this variance is granted, subject to some sign off from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, I'm confident that Michael Reagan is the attorney that I've been working with that represents Rockwood School District. They signed off on a 3-page letter about the process and the procedure, which should be part of your packet. And again, if this board requires something directly from the Department of Natural Resources and you can provide me with some specificity of what that requirement would be, I'm confident that I could work with Rockwood School District to get you what it is that you need.
Yeah, because I think what I hear from Dan is, you know, when this deal was put together in the first place, that waste treatment plant was basically put on 20+ acres of land. Okay, now it's not using all 20-some acres of land, but that's the parcel that it was put on, right?
Yes, sir, but the contract between the parties only grants them an easement to 1/2 of an acre. So the contract,
Right.
the contract that we currently have, we are actually doubling the size of what the access is that they currently have. And as Mr. Vunich stated, you know, we can even include in our transfer documents with the Rockwood School District that they would have a right of first refusal for any expansion that may be necessitated by the Department of Natural Resources.
Yeah, I think the point that I was going to try and get to is from the Department of Natural Resources perspective, I don't know if they know about this half-acre agreement thing between the brothers and the school district. I have no idea whether they know about, don't know if I care. But if the Department of Natural Resources says, oh, you want to put that on 1 acre? Okay, we have a little problem with that. You know, I think that's where, I'm not sure if that's where Dan was going, but if it is, I think I get that. Where, you know, if we approve this, we'd want to make sure we're approving it such that we don't have problems with any other organization. I know it's not necessarily our issue, it's yours, but, you know, just in the interest of being, I don't know, thorough, it makes me wonder whether or not it would make sense to have the Department of Natural Resources, you know, sign off on, you know, your plat.
Again, we will do whatever it is that you want to do, but where we are now is no different than where we will be if you grant this variance request. Right now, if the Missouri Department of Natural Resources were to obligate Rockwood School District, let's just exaggerate. Let's say that they need 5 acres. They don't have 5 acres right now. They only have 1/2 of an acre. So Rockwood School District would need to come to the brothers to say, we need to increase the size of our easement. We need to increase the size of the land that we are currently leasing from you. I don't think that by granting this variance and transferring the property to them, that we are altering that, that problem as you perceive it to be at all. They're still going to have to come back to the brothers to get more land if that would be required down the road. But, you know, we're here today on, you know, July the 21st of 2022, where there's an operating sewage treatment facility that's been in place since 1992 or 93, trying to speculate about something that may or may not happen in the future. I'm not sure that that's fruitful for our purposes of this variance request. But again, if that is what the city needs in order to approve this, I will be diligent in my efforts to satisfy your needs.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I'm not trying to present the case for the petitioner, but she said that the situation would not be changed if the variance were granted. And I would probably just note again that the current lease is only for 22,000 square feet of ground where the current facility is located, and this would double that size. So there would be a change, so to speak. And so again, from the perspective of the department, if the board were to grant the variance, you could certainly condition something from MDNR being submitted in terms of the review of the plat.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vunich, for that. Any other comments?
Yeah, just to clarify, so this facility was built when LaSalle was built at the same time?
I believe that to be the case. I think that the documents, as best as I can tell, were created the end of 1992 as part and parcel of the construction of the school. I'm not for certain on that, but it looks like the agreements were entered prior to the construction of the sewage treatment facility.
Do we know how it was worked before this was built? Was there an older, some sort of, is this an updated version of something that was already there? Or was there a whole different system before LaSalle went in?
Mr. Sides, I was hoping you weren't going to ask about 1992. I actually signed off on the site development plan for the school back then. So that tells you how old I am. But this plant was required as a component of the school's construction and more importantly, its occupancy. So there wasn't anything there previously.
Okay. So.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Sides, I just tried to clarify with the LaSalle president. It seems like prior to the construction of the sewage treatment facility that the LaSalle Institute back at the time had well water that they were using. So it was quite an upgrade for the retreat center to be able to tie into this sewage treatment facility back then.
What do you mean well water for sewage?
We did not have anything other than what was on our property until this sewage treatment facility was erected.
We had to have something. I mean, unless it was just running out on the ground. Yeah, there's some sort of sewage septic tank or something.
Well, I'm sure there was something, but I'm gonna pull on Mr. Lee here and try and circle us back to the issue at hand here. So let's get back to this whole business of whether or not we want to grant this approval. Are there any other questions for Ms. Toko or Mr. Vunich that would shed any additional light on our decisioning on this? Anything else? Okay, I don't see any other hands, so thank you, Ms. Toko, for sharing your comments with us. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to any other individual speakers in the audience or someone who would like to speak in favor or opposition to the request. If you would like to do that, use the raise hand feature and we will get you promoted. I don't see any hands. Do you, Mr. Vunich?
Not at this time, sir. So thank you.
Yeah, okay. Well, that being the case, then I'd like to offer an opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report, if anyone would like to hear that. I do not see any hands. Therefore, I will remember to let the department have any final comments that they would like to make regarding this case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the board, the department has prepared a recommendation report for your consideration. In that recommendation report, the department is not supporting the requested variance. And if there are any questions, certainly the department would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vunich. At this time, I'd like to just offer one last opportunity for the board members to make comments or have discussion amongst ourselves or whatever on this particular case. I'm actually going to open this. This one's a little bit of a hard one, I think, in some ways. I certainly understand, you know, the department's recommendation, and I get that. And it seems like the 3-acre minimum option would be an incredibly difficult option to make happen. Having 2 lots, yeah, I see that as a real possibility. You know, I mean, it's changes things a bit between the school and the brothers. I think what the petitioner's asking, you know, if I were to just see this from 10,000 feet, I'd say, wow, it seems like it makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, I wish it were simply in compliance with current, you know, current zoning things, but the school's going to take responsibility for the plant. That seems like that makes a lot of sense. The equine people get an area that they can use for their therapy stuff that they want to do. That sure makes a whole lot of sense. And the brothers, can keep the rest of that property and actually have it available should that plant ever need to be, increased. If I were actually Rockwood, I would think twice about only taking an acre because you never know what's going to happen downstream. If I were them, I'd say, why don't we make that a little bit bigger? But that's their call, So in a lot of ways, it really does seem to make a whole lot of sense. And I want to vote for it. I mean, I'm not saying what I'm going to do, but I really want to because it just seems like it makes sense. But anyway, those are just some of my thoughts. I'd like to maybe have the other board members kind of chime in and share their thoughts on this thing.
Well, I kind of agree with you, Arnie. I'm not so much concerned about having division of 3-acre lots in a floodplain as I am solving this problem for the petitioner. I don't think it really sets any kind of precedence. I think we're doing this based upon this particular set of circumstances. That's where I'm leaning.
Mr. Chair, if there is an inclination on the board's part to grant the variance, you could obviously address the issue of the Missouri Department of Natural Resources that's been discussed, but you could also say that the lot would be no less than 1 acre, not just say 1 acre. That way, if Rockwood does want to purchase more, we've given them that option.
That's an excellent point. Because like I say, if I were them, I'd think long and hard about locking myself into a 1-acre parcel. But anyway, thank you for those suggestions. Any other board members want to weigh in on this case? Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, so just to kind of summarize how I feel about it, like Ms. Toko says, no matter what we do here today, it's not going to change a whole lot. If anything, with the exception of something like this creates an opportunity to either make sure something is good or bad or needs improvement. And that's kind of what I look at here, especially with a septic waste system that's in a floodplain. I would certainly feel better with getting the Department of Resources involved and make sure they have a clear understanding of what this whole issue is, what we're trying to do here, and just see what they say about it. But I'd feel much better because I don't know. I haven't never seen the plant. I wouldn't know what I was looking at if I did. But I do live very close to that creek. And so it maybe concerns me more than others. But I just feel like I don't have enough information to move this on. And even if it truly doesn't change much on the scope of how the land is divided, we may lose an opportunity to fix something that needed fixed earlier than later. If that makes any sense. And I don't even know if anything needs fixed, but I would like to know.
So Dan, let me ask you this question. If kind of per your suggestion, if the Department of Natural Resources reviewed it and said, yeah, it's all good, that the way that they're, dividing up the land, that'll work. Having that acre should be fine, and the plant is working perfectly fine. How would you feel then? I mean, if they
I think I would feel like I had enough information to vote on anyway. It would certainly make me more comfortable. And thinking about that, besides the Department of Natural Resources, I would kind of like to see something from St. Louis County, because the only thing we have from St. Louis County in our packet is something about a certification that there's no duplication of a name. And I'm not sure who trumps who in the inspection of septic systems in that area. I'm assuming that St. Louis County would be first, but I don't know. So I wouldn't mind hearing from both of them.
Mr. Sides, the tail that wags the dog is MDNR. They're the permitting entity, and they also are the entity that receives the monthly reports from the inspection service.
Okay, well then that should do it.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Lee or Mr. Morris, you want to weigh in on this or?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, I'll comment, kind of from my previous position as on Planning and Zoning Commission. What we tried to do there was make things logical for, you know, the land and what it can be used for. Cutting this down to an acre for a sanitary waste facility basically locks that in for that use. You know, this is not going to be redeveloped into a high rise or an apartment complex. It's a sanitary facility that's needed and in that location. So as Ms. Toko said, this is not going to change in use, you know, at any time within our lifetime. And the 3 acre minimum was for land development to provide the non-urban criteria. This isn't non-urban criteria. So from the standpoint of zoning and area versus use, I don't see a problem with this. The other thing that is very critical is not having a piece of property landlocked. And as Joe can tell you, on a lot of developments, we would try to maximize area for either natural resource area or you know, city access, but we never compromised, you know, the lots from, I guess, from the landlocked scenario. So I tend to want to support this as far as the process. I know it goes to council. They're gonna require a plat. What we have basically sets that up, and if we want Missouri Department of Natural Resource approval, that can be a condition upon the motion. That's about it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lee. And Mr. Morris, do you want to weigh in or you feel like you have what you need?
I got what I need.
You got what you need, all right.
Yeah.
All right. So as we've kicked this around, I'm going to try and summarize this. You know, we can obviously deny it as it's requested. We can approve it as requested. There were a couple of conditions that were suggested to provide a little bit more flexibility. Well, one was for flexibility, and that is not locking it into specifically 1 acre, but on the condition that it would be at least 1 acre. That would give room for acquiring more land if that were felt necessary. And then the other condition maybe would be getting sign off. I'm not sure what sign off means, but to get sign off from MDNR on the plan, which I guess is really saying that the 1 acre lot, or they may say something bigger, which is what the other condition allows for. So I think that certainly makes a whole lot of sense. So I think in summary, that's kind of where we're at as a board. But having said that, I think we're going to go ahead, unless there's any other comments, we're going to close this proceeding for a vote. And did you all get a chance to do your final comments? I think you did, didn't you? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. This one's kind of getting away from me here a little bit, but let's go ahead and close this up. And I'm going to ask for a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions. Mr. Rubus.
I make a motion to approve the request with the conditions as stated, that the term be not less than 1 acre. And I don't know if sign off is the proper thing, but that the plan be approved by MDNR.
Okay, very good. And do we have a second on that? Mr. Lee, I see your hand.
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. And so now we shall call for a vote. Mr. Sides, how do you vote?
So before I vote, how will that work? If there's an approval from the DNR, do we see that, or do we get together again on this, or?
Mr. Chair, with your permission, what I would intend to do with the cooperation of Ms. Toko is send them a copy of the plat identifying the minimum 1 acre lot. Ask them if that's sufficient if a major expansion of the school were to occur. Maybe we'll have to refine that. And then also just ask them current conditions at the plant. Is it operating according to permit? And then I would forward that information to the Board of Adjustment.
Mr. Vunich, would that require any action on the Board of Adjustment, or is that informational?
Well, my suspicion is that the plan is operating at permitted conditions, or there would have been something that would have been done. We would have been notified as the city by MDNR. The only thing I would see changing is if MDNR said it might be safe to make it 1.5 acres. And so then we would basically let you know that your variance as granted with it being at least 1 acre worked, and that all is well.
Right, so then they would be able to go ahead and execute on that without requiring another vote from the Board of Adjustment. Okay, all right. So in summary, we have a motion to approve with the conditions that that lot size where the treatment plant is at least 1 acre, and that we have sign off, review and sign off from MDNR. And that was seconded. So now I'm going to go back to asking Dan, how do you vote?
I would vote to approve that. Although it seems a little bit like something, I'm not quite sure the 6 of one and half dozen the other of the potential of pushing this off until a report comes in and then voting on it, other than waiting till, I guess it's the same thing. Maybe saves a little time. So I'll just vote to approve.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Approve with the conditions.
Mr. Rubus, how do you vote?
Vote to approve with condition.
And Mr. Lee, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I too vote yes with the conditions. And so congratulations, Ms. Toko. Your variance has been approved with those conditions, and I wish you all the best as you navigate through the final steps to get this finished up.
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening and for cooperating and allowing us to make this happen. Mr. Vunich, I did want to let you know that if you need any sign off from the brothers or from Rockwood School District regarding your request to MDNR, please let me know. I will update Rockwood on what's happening and what's going on so that they're in the loop, and also the brothers and equine assisted therapy.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes the cases for this evening. And we are almost finished with our meeting. There's one more item on the agenda. And that is, we were planning to elect officers tonight. However, because we are short with regular board members, we're thinking it might make a little bit of sense to postpone that action until the next meeting when we have a fuller complement of our regular board members. That's not to downplay the importance of the alternates. You guys have been great because you've been here. So that was outstanding. But I think we, would like to just postpone that for a meeting. So if that's okay with you all, I will need to have someone make a motion to postpone electing the officers. Could I have a motion for that, Mr. Morris?
I'll make a motion, we postpone it.
Okay. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second that to postpone. Okay. All right. So Mr. Rubus, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Sides?
Yes.
And I also vote yes to postpone our election of officers. Okay, having completed that, I think we have finished. And I would again like to thank all of you for your time, your effort, and your insight as we, as we process these cases. I trust that we get the right answer at the end of the day, and I think we have. So anyway, thanks again for your work. So we are done.
Thank you all. We appreciate it.
Thanks again. Have a good night.
Good night. Mr. Vunich, and Mr. Vunich, can I ask you a question? Would you happen to have a minute or two? I wanted to ask you something not related to any of this. Could I contact you, or could you give me a call and just spend just a couple minutes offline?
Tonight or in the morning?
Your choice. I can spend just a couple more minutes tonight. It's really a short thing. Or if you'd rather wait till tomorrow, that's okay too.
Melanie, can you keep it going? Maybe we can try it tonight. I'm the co-host, so I can conclude the meeting, right?
Sure. The meeting's been adjourned. If you'd like, I can stop recording and we can figure that out. How does that sound?
Sounds good. So